What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/StoriesAboutKevin. This story is called Adorable Kevin Got His Heart Broken by an Adorable Money-Grubbing Witch Who Didn't Know How Fierce His Friends Are. I want to start by stating that Kevin and I are still great friends to this day. He's given me permission, with some poking, to share this story. So let me introduce you to Kevin. Kevin is around 5 feet 11 inches tall, male, long black hair and a beard, which, to his chagrin, never seems to grow past 2 inches in length. He's one of the most adorable people I've ever met. Kevin is rather wealthy. His father is a multi-millionaire who owns a small geological prospecting business. Accordingly, Kevin receives a stipend, which winds up coming around to multiple thousands of dollars every month. This is important later. I first met Kevin way back in 2009 at a metal concert, Behemoth if you're curious, and we hit it off immediately. We would go between the music and buy rounds for each other all night. About half an hour before the concert ended, he looked at his watch, swore, and said that he needed to go home quickly, that he needed to tend to his kittens. Yes, kittens. You see, Kevin is dumb as hell. Adorable, sure, but dumb. The one thing he does really well is taking care of animals. He fosters orphan kittens that need bottle feeding and regular care until they are old enough to be adopted out. If you want him to take care of any activity that doesn't involve a living creature, you have to write him a list, lest he completely forgets what he was meant to be doing and goes off to do something else. I've seen him ask what people want for coffee and forget in the 10 steps to the counter, only to come back to ask, red-faced, what we wanted again. This only means he can't really work. He's tried working at his father's company and wound up getting injured because of a silly mistake, and other jobs haven't panned out in a similar fashion. In lieu of that, his father has him managing his rental properties and pays him as the real estate manager. He does manage to do that alright, though he often needs to consult his calendar, organized by a secretary, to figure out what needs to be done next. I'm not sure how much value he brings to his father's property management business, but his father is just happy that Kevin is able to work and just has people within the business to cover for him when he forgets or misses things. Kevin and I are part of a fairly wide circle of friends, all of whom feel protective of him. He would do anything for us, and we would do anything for him. He's kind of the little brother of the group, even though he's one of the oldest, if that makes sense. Things were going well until he met Witch. Not her real name, of course. Witch was cute from the metal scene, and from the moment Kevin laid his eyes on her, he was head over heels. It seems that Witch liked him too, and they quickly became close. From then on, it was uncommon to see either one of them alone. They were more or less joined at the hip. In the beginning, Witch was lovely. She seemed kind, bubbly, and all around a good person. She had us all fooled. We naturally accepted her into our group, and life went on. Kevin and Witch got closer and closer together until Kevin proposed with a ring worth over 10 grand, and Witch said yes. Aside from the huge rock on her finger, nothing really changed. That is, until they married. Their marriage was a huge affair. It was conducted in a small tropical nation, and Kevin flew many of his close friends, myself included, out there so that we could all attend the ceremony. We all tried to say that we could get our own flights, but he flat out refused, saying that he was doing this for his friends and we were going to accept it. I must say, the reception and ceremony were beautiful. They really put a lot of planning into it and made it spectacular. I shudder to think of what it cost, but Kevin still speaks fondly of that memory to this day, so in his mind, it was worth it. After the marriage was finished and everyone went home, Witch changed. She went from friendly and bubbly to withdrawn, brooding, and snarky. She would barely speak to Kevin, let alone spend time with him, and would always be going out with her other friend groups and not be including him in anything she was doing. He still tried to bring her along with him to our group, but she always had some excuse or other as to why she couldn't attend. Things continued like that for months, eventually hitting 6 months. By this time, Kevin was a mess. His usually friendly, goofy mood had been replaced by depression, anxiety, and an overarching pessimism that permeated all of his interactions with his friends. We all knew what the problem was, but he rebuffed any attempts to suggest that Witch was the cause. Despite all that she had done to him, he still cared deeply for her and wouldn't bridge anyone saying anything negative about her. Around the 7 months of marriage mark, Witch announced that she was pregnant. Kevin was overjoyed and, for a while, went back to his old self. We subtly suggested that this might not be his baby, but he didn't care. He was going to be a father, regardless of whose it might have been. He turned his focus towards the new baby, completely renovating a bedroom by himself with paint and everything ready for finding out whether it would be a boy or girl. He adopted a few of the kittens he hand-reared, named Pokey, Binta, and Zeus, because, as he said it, so the baby can have furry little brothers and sisters. A couple of months into the pregnancy, Witch served Kevin with divorce papers. She told him that she wanted to move in with the man who is the true father of the child. When Kevin said that he would be the father of the child, Witch actually had the nerve to laugh at him and said that it couldn't be his if they weren't having sex at the time she got pregnant. Does she mean like in general, like they weren't boning at all, or is that just like a weird way of saying he can't be the father if he didn't conceive the baby? She grabbed some things and moved out that night. Kevin was utterly destroyed by this. He not only lost the love of his life, he lost what he saw as his child. He called one of our friend group, and word spread among the rest of us. Within a couple of hours, we were all at his house, consoling him. Around 30 people in total. Jesus. When Kevin started to show suicidality, I've never heard that word. We all come to a decision, called his father, and got Kevin to a hospital. Kevin spent a few weeks in a psychiatric unit and came out a lot better than when he went in. While it's not known for sure, we are fairly certain that Kevin's father made a substantial donation to ensure that Kevin got the best care possible. By the time he came out, he had spent many hours with a psychologist and was returning to his old self. It wasn't more than a month after Kevin came out of the hospital that divorce proceedings started. Kevin's father judged that Kevin would not do well under the scrutiny of the court and organized to be there himself instead with Kevin's lawyer. Witch and her lawyer were trying to take everything Kevin had. Unfortunately for her, Kevin's propensity for being a bit silly with money had made his father careful, and the vast majority of his wealth was locked up in a trust under his father's name and was managed by a financial planner who Kevin spoke to once or twice a month. The only thing that Kevin legally owned was his car, worth about $30,000, which his father just gave to her to gain a quick end to the proceedings. He also wrote a check in lieu of alimony payments, and though I don't know how much it was made clear that it was a substantial amount, with the stipulation that Witch has no more contact with Kevin or his family. She agreed to this, and the session was ended. Kevin was recovering well, but still heartbroken. When he would get a little too drunk, he would slip into that pessimism and start pining for Witch. This happened enough that it made the whole friend group deeply angry at her over the course of time, and a plan was hatched. It turned out that many of the people in the group were well connected with the Witch's other friend groups. They all started to gather what information they could about Witch and dig up any dirt they could find, and they come across a jackpot. As it turned out, Witch was cheating on her new current boyfriend, whose child she was still carrying. This was quietly slipped to her new boyfriend, and a massive argument ensued, where Witch wound up getting kicked out of the house. After going through her phone, it turned out that she was cheating on her boyfriend with not one, but 3 other guys, and was obviously setting one of them up to move on to since she was done with her current boyfriend. He also found old texts with Kevin and got into contact with him. As it turns out, the boyfriend and Kevin knew each other peripherally. As the edges of the friend groups merged, they had spoken on 1 or 2 occasions. Over many beers and a fair amount of time, they shared their experiences and wound up getting along pretty well, all things considered, well enough to begin forming a friendship. When the baby was born, blood tests were done, and Witch was found to have cocaine in her system. The baby also tested positive. CPS took the child child and placed her in a foster family. In the time after, the now ex-boyfriend sued and won custody over the child. Kevin found out about this. He tentatively asked if he could meet ex-boyfriend's daughter. The ex-boyfriend agreed, and Kevin got to meet her, which got very limited custody, 2 weekends a month, as long as she stayed clean of drugs. We've actually floated the idea that Kevin may well have a mild to moderate intellectual disability and could get support, but he doesn't want to get tested. He's happy where he is now and doesn't want anything to change. Kevin still works for his father's business. His father passed away a couple of years ago from cancer, and technically, Kevin holds the majority ownership of the company. It's all handled for him by trustees, and the current CEO of the company is good friends with Kevin. Ex-boyfriend is doing super well. He's still a single dad and loves it. He works as a senior manager in a small transport company and has a good life going for him and his daughter, which actually turned her life around and lives in a quiet, comfortable life in a moderately sized rural town where she works in a shop selling specialty foods like cheeses and cold cuts. She never remarried. It's been about 8 years since all that went down. In that time, Kevin has moved ex-boyfriend and his daughter into one of the properties his father owns. With virtually no rent, he's back to his old happy self, has a longtime girlfriend, and very often goes to visit ex-boyfriend as Uncle Kevin. He absolutely dotes on that child. He still does rather dumb things all the time. He's still the old Kevin we know and love. And yes, he still fosters orphan kittens. I don't think he'll ever stop doing that. Aw, that's a really sweet story. However, I don't really see how he's a Kevin necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying he's not a Kevin. They just didn't really get into the Kevin-ness. This is more of a story of something that happened. So I'm not really getting the Kevin vibes, but a really good story nonetheless. Makes me happy, the happy ending, and I'm glad Witch turned her life around. That's what we like to see. Redemption. Red Dead Redemption. Brings me to my point that I've been trying to make this entire episode so far. If you haven't played Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, you should do it by now. They're amazing games. So, if you do, play the first one and let it sit, okay? Finish the game, then you gotta let it rest. You know, when you take a steak off the grill or the pan or whatever the hell you're cooking steak on, you don't slice into it right away. You gotta let it rest. You gotta let everything settle. Alright, this story's called Kevin Tries to Seduce My Health Teacher, Ended Up Getting Chased Naked with a Golf Club. It's almost 11 o'clock p.m. and I just remembered this story my health teacher told me last year. Some parts of the story may be lost since I was only told it once about a year ago, and it happened over 30 years ago. Here's the cast: Missy Elliott, who happened to be the health teacher. Kevin, friend and roommate. I don't know the freaking genders. Okay. This happened back in the mid-80s, and Missy Elliott was a young woman who decided to go to a nightclub with a friend to enjoy a few drinks and have fun. Friend had left at some point, and she was Missy Elliott's ride home. And with no cell phone, she was stuck at a club. Enter Kevin. Kevin noticed the damsel in distress and offered Missy Elliott a ride home to her apartment. Although she was a little tipsy from the alcohol, she was not an idiot, and at first turned down the offer of getting into the car of some douchebag she never met. Kevin begged, and Missy Elliott finally gave in, since he could be her only way home. Fortunately, Kevin kept to his word and drove Missy Elliott home. This is where the fun starts. Don't tell Kevin that, he might get the wrong idea. Hey, can I come inside for a minute to use the bathroom? Can't you just do your business in the woods? I'm scared of the dark. Can I please come inside and use the bathroom? Fine, you can come inside, but only to use the bathroom, understand? So Kevin does his business in the apartment, but was not giving up his slim chance of having a one-night stand. Hey, can I stay a while for the night? Can we cuddle together? No, I only let you in to use my bathroom, nothing else. Get out. Please, can we please cuddle? Out, now! Kevin then retreated back into the bathroom and returned a minute or two later, completely naked, wagging his tail side to side, and presumably with a poo-eating grin on his face, trying to seduce Missy Elliott, who is just in complete shock at the sheer stupidity of this pervert. This is when Roommate enters the picture, and chaos breaks loose. Out of nowhere, she comes in, screaming like a banshee, swinging a golf club at Kevin. Kevin doesn't have time for his clothes, and Roommate was screaming at a naked Kevin while swinging a golf club at him all the way through an apartment complex. Missy Elliott took Kevin's clothes and tossed them out the balcony, but he didn't see them, and Kevin drove away naked into the night. 30 years later, a classroom full of laughing teenagers. The end. Okay, thank God Roommate was there, because God, that's just a weird situation. And potentially very, very, very scary for Missy Elliott. This story's called, I Just Watched a Man Mop the Carpet. I work with a Kevin. He consistently does things that just don't quite make sense. Most of them kinda make sense, like, oh, he just didn't understand what he was asked to do. Today was different. He is the janitor at the store I work at, and there was a leaking bag, box, or something. I didn't see what caused the spill, but it was essentially a trail of drops leading outside into the carpeted lobby. He's just following the drops out with a mop, and when he reached the carpet, he just kept going, mopping the carpet. When asked what he was doing, he just said, "Oh, I was just lightly mopping up the drops," as if it was totally normal. Who mops carpet? And no, he's not young, he's like 50. P.S. Sorry for rambling. Hey man, when you've been on the job for that long, you pick up a thing or two. Or at least in his case, maybe many thousands of things, given that he's a janitor. Alright, this story's called Smoking Room Tales, a Kavina story. I work in a large factory with a lot of people. When I was on a smoking break, Kavina said the following thing to 10 people who were also in the same small smoking room. "Yesterday I went to a place and got myself some fat-burning pills." She's as skinny as a deer. "When I was home, I was very eager to try them out, so I took some butter and crushed the pills to watch what happens. But I was surprised the butter didn't disappear. It only got like much lighter in color." She honestly thought the butter would vanish in thin air. I never had such a hard time not to laugh at her. Okay, so yeah, Kavina story. Well, that's a Kavina, silly person. But what the real thing is here, alright, is the exploitive nature of a diet industry thing, people. Look at this, Kavina, skinny as a deer, and she's buying fat-burning pills? What is this? She doesn't need fat-burning pills. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.